Sakineh Mohammadi Ashtiani. If you've been following the news over the last year, her picture and her story will be familiar to you. A campaign to free her, stories of her imminent stoning, criticism of Iran's inhumane treatment, and protests in her support. Even politicians from the United States to Brazil have weighed in. What's really given the story momentum is the intense Western media coverage, telling the tale of an innocent woman condemned. But there are always two sides to a story, and sometimes many more. The Iran Today team has been monitoring this story since it hit the headlines at the start of 2010. We've watched the developments unfold inside and outside the country. And we've been doing our own investigating too, from officials in Iran to the head of the campaign to free Sakineh, from her lawyer to her family. What we found is a web of complex and sometimes bizarre events. A story with a number of key players that span from Iran to Germany, each with a different take, each at different times pointing the finger of blame at each other. A story that includes affairs, murder, prison, execution, and much more. At the end of November 2010, we were given access to some of the key information and some of the key people involved in this case, including Sakineh herself. Our journey started here, Oskul, a small town in the northwest of Iran. This is the tight-knit community where Sakineh grew up. In her teens, she married Ebrahim Baderzadeh. Ebrahim was 43 years old. For over 2 decades, he'd worked at the local bank. When he lost that job at the start of 2005, he found new work in Karaj, just outside Tehran. He would commute from Karaj to Oskul, where he still lived with his wife and 2 children, daughter Saideh and son Sajjad. Sakineh and Ebrahim lived 23 years together, until the day he was brutally murdered. Here is what we know about the events that led to that fateful Wednesday, 14th of September back in 2005. When Iran Today sat down with Sakineh, she told us it all started with a phone call.
یه روز نشسته بودم که دیدم که تلفن زنگ میزنه. گوشی رو برداشتم، یه حرفایی زدن که گوشی رو قطع کردم، نشناختمش چیه. بعد دوباره زنگ زد، سومین بار برداشتم گوشی رو، گفت که تو رو خدا گوشی رو قطع نکن، باهات کار دارم، حرف دارم. گفتم چه کاری داری؟ تو کی هستی؟ گفت من فامیل شما هستم. گفتم من در شهرستان اسکوز زندگی میکردم. گفتم من اینجا فامیلی ندارم، من کسی رو ندارم اینجا. گفت چرا؟ من فامیل شما هستم، شما نون منو خوردیم، ما نون شما رو خوردیم. من با خودم تعجب کردم. بچه ها رفتم بیرون، این دوباره زنگ زد گفت که منو شناختی؟ گفتم نه من نشناختم. گفت باشه میشناسی. با اون گلگرار گذاشتیم پارک، رفتیم پارک. اونجا دیدم که عیسی طاهریه.
So, who is Isa Taheri? Well, it turns out that's a question much harder to answer than you think. When we started researching Isa, we found no mention of him in media reports inside or outside the country. He was literally the invisible man. We started our search by asking around the locals in Oskul, and we were immediately warned against approaching Isa. He was notorious for his thuggish behaviour and his run-ins with the police, and his father was a heavyweight in the area because of the money he had accumulated from his local business. Undeterred, we pushed for where to find him, and our search took us to this office in Tabriz. We captured this footage on a hidden camera. You can see Isa on the left speaking to his father. We approached him, explained who we were and why we wanted an interview, to get his side of the story. But we couldn't persuade him, and he refused to talk to us on camera. But he did agree to let us take his picture. So we couldn't talk to Isa, but Sakineh told us what happened the first time they met.
گفت که میخوام باهات دوست بشم، میخوام باهات آشنا بشم. گفتم چطور؟ آخه من شوهر دارم، بچه دارم، تو هم زن داری، بچه داری. این قبول نکرد. گفت من هرچی میخوام اینو بگو. گفتم باشه. از اونجا آشنا شدیم، دوست شدیم. یکی دو
Having an affair is more or less a taboo all around the world, although in some societies it has become less so. In Iran, though, it is still very much a taboo and frowned on by a society whose culture and religious beliefs see it as a social and moral betrayal. That is reflected in its legal system. We spoke to Iranian psychologist Zainab Khanjani, who explained more about betrayal and its psychological roots.
وجدان اخلاقی ضعیف، تحول اخلاقی یا تحول اخلاقی رشد نیافته یا عدم بلوغ اخلاقی، ویژگی‌های شخصیتی مثل اختلال شخصیت ضد اجتماعی و در حقیقت روانپریشگرایی یا سایکوتیسم فاکتورهایی هست درونی هستند که افراد رو به سوی خیانت و در نهایت سوق میدن.
Betrayal is not just explained, though, through psychology and human behaviour. It's an issue that is discussed in all religions as well.
In every family, there can be problems, any kind of problem, be it financial, be it, let's say, activity, this and that. But betrayal is, let's say, big injustice, big unfilial to the other part. So, if anyone betrays, that means he goes against his vow. That means a promise he or she gives, doesn't respect. If you don't respect your word, no one will respect you.
But Sakine's story was more than just an affair or a betrayal. It was a betrayal that led to murder.
این یه روز به من زنگ زد، گفت که بچه ها رو بفرست پیش مادر تبریز بیام. من گفتم چرا؟ گفت میخوام شوهرتو فردا بکشم. گفتم با کی؟ گفت به برگ میزنم. گفتم چطور؟ گفت تو یه آمپول بیهوشی میزنی، من بعد میام وقتی شوهرت بیهوش شد من میام شوهرتو به برگ میدم.
When we were given access to interview Sakine, we asked if we could see the house where the murder took place. The permission was granted and Sakine was even allowed to accompany us. Back in her old home, she ran through the events that took place on the day of the murder. From her account, we filmed this reconstruction. You may find some of these images upsetting, and they do include the real pictures of Ibrahim, Sakine's murdered husband's body.
شوهرم حالش خوب نبود، رفته بود دکتر آمپول تزریق داده بود براش، آمپول سرماخوردگی داده براش، همینجا استراحت می‌کرد. من تزریقی بلد بودم، حالا میرم آمپول شوهرم آماده کنم بزنم. کیسه دارو رو اینجا گذاشتم، همون آمپولی که عیسی طاهری گرفته بود از اینجا برمی‌دارم. عوض سرماخوردگی آمپول بیهوشی. آمپول بیهوشی رو که آماده کردم رفتم به شوهرم تزریق کنم. بعد یه 20 دقیقه میشد که شوهرم بیهوش شده بود. عیسی زنگ زد که بیهوش شده. گفتم آره تو فلانی. تصمیم گرفته بود که شوهرم رو به برگ بکشه. اول سیمو به پاش بست، یک شو به کمرش، وقتی عیسی سیمو وصل کرد پریز برگ پرید. عیسی 6 بار به شوهرم برگ وصل کرد، نمرده بود، تکون میخورد، ولی 70
When police arrived at the scene of the crime, at first glance it looked like a suicide, but there were signs that the death was suspicious. They sent the body for post-mortem at Tabriz's forensics office. The head pathologist at the centre explained about the autopsy his team conducted 5 years ago.
در بررسی‌هایی که انجام شده از این آقای حدوداً 44 ساله آثار سوختگی ناشی از برق گرفتگی رو در پا، پشت بدن و ناحیه صورت و گردن مشاهده کرده بودند. بررسی‌های تکمیلی هم در موردشون انجام شد، بررسی‌های سمشناسی و آسیب شناسی و نهایتاً با بررسی تمامی جوانب علت فوت در مورد ایشون برق گرفتگی اعلام شد.
On the 28th of September 2005, Sakineh walked into the local police station, but there are two versions of why she did. One is of remorseful confession.
رفتم خودم رو معرفی کردم چون وجدانم ناراحت بود که من این چه کاری بود کردم. 23 سال با شوهرم زندگی کردم. آخرش این چه روزی بود که به روزگارش آوردم.
The other version can be found in these documents, the police reports of the murder obtained exclusively by Iran Today. Here it reads that Sakineh was summoned by the police and soon confessed to being involved in the murder of her husband. In her first confession, Sakineh named her accomplice, Isa Taheri. Police arrested him in connection with the murder of Sakineh's husband, and he also admitted the charge. Within a matter of weeks, on the 22nd of October 2005, this complaint was made against Sakineh Ashtiani. Any details that may identify the complainant have been covered here because she does not want to be identified. She was the wife of a local factory worker who believed her husband had been sexually involved with Sakineh. A new and separate investigation was opened. A number of accusations were made that Sakineh had engaged in sexual activity for money. Police looked into the matter, one that is taken very seriously in Iran. What they did find was forensic evidence that two relations had taken place. Sakineh confessed to prostitution. The trials went to court. Sakineh and Isa were charged with murder, but of course there were several other separate cases. The two lovers were tried for adultery. Sakineh was tried for prostitution alongside the other two men. By February 2006, Sakineh's file landed on the desk of the Tabriz Prosecutor General to be signed off, the normal protocol. But when he saw the file, the Prosecutor General asked for the case to be reopened and examined by the country's Supreme Court. The case was sent for review at the Supreme Court, with 5 judges sitting. Their final verdict was a divided one. 2 of the judges said that the case should be closed and no further action taken. 3 of the judges, though, disagreed. They said that Sakineh should be stoned to death. In reality, though, it was more of a symbolic verdict. Why? Because by the time the stoning sentence was handed down, a bylaw had already been in existence for 1 year that banned stoning from taking place at all. Here's where things get a bit confusing legally. In 2005, then head of Iran's judiciary, Ayatollah Shahroudi, prohibited any stoning from taking place. But because this has yet to be fully integrated into official Iranian law, contradictions can come about. A judge, working on the basis of the law, gives a verdict of stoning, a verdict that the bylaw doesn't allow to take place. But Sakineh's son, Sajjad, could not rest easy. He said that he feared that if the bylaw was overturned, his mother could face death the next day.
ما ترسیدیم که یک موقع حالا بیان به جای سنگسار بحث اعدام رو مطرح بکنه.
Sajjad says he knocked on every door to try and find a way to help his mother. On the internet, he searched stoning and came across the name of Mina Ahadi. But who is she? Born in 1956, Mina Ahadi has said herself that she started her political activity at aged 14 and that she was actively involved against the government after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Iran's judiciary says that from 1979 to 83, Mina was a member of the communist militant Kurdish Revolutionary Fighters. In 1981, her husband, Esmail Yegane Dost, was executed for being a member of the armed Kurdish separatist Komele terrorist group and taking part in its militant activity that, according to official statistics, has killed over 2,000 people in the last 30 years, including Kurdish civilians and religious leaders. Iran also says that Assadi herself became an official member of Komele in 1983.
خانم مینا احدی خودش یک گذشته خاصی رو داره. در بعضی از گروه‌های تروریستی عضویت داشته سالها، اطلاعاتی در این زمینه به دست آمده که خود ایشون در واقع میخواد نفعی برای خودش در کشورهای خارجی به خصوص در کشور آلمان ایجاد بکنه. این پرونده رو در دستور کار خودش قرار داده و با افراد متعددی ارتباط برقرار میکنه تا بتونه از این طریق برای خودش کاری رو انجام بده.
We contacted Mina Ahadi to get her side of the story. We talked to her once on the phone and arranged an interview, but since then she has not answered our calls or responded to any of our attempts to contact her. What we've been told, though, is that Ahadi's immediate short-term solution for Sajjad was for him to contact Mohammad Mostafai, a lawyer who at the time was based in Tehran.
به مصطفی زنگ زدم و ایشون 2 میلیون از ما پول خواستن. ما هم دادیم. من بردم پول رو ریختم به حسابشون و ایشون کار خودشون رو آغاز کردن. و تا به حالم ندیدمشون. همش با تلفن حرف زدیم.
Ahadi and Mostafai told Sajjad the best way to publicize his mother's case was to speak to as many foreign media outlets as possible. In July 2010, Mostafai fled Iran and later sought asylum in Norway, and that's exactly what he did himself. He spoke to many media outlets, including this BBC interview, in which he maintained he never took a penny from the Ashtianis.
من در مورد همه پرونده‌های حقوق بشری 1 ریال از کسی نمی‌گرفتم، خالصانه کار می‌کردم.
His attention that Sakine's case has become known worldwide. But the long story you've just heard, with its twists and turns and different takes on events, has not been mentioned in the Western media. With Mostafai in Europe, Sajjad was without a lawyer. He appointed Hutan Kian to take over his mother's case. In his interview with Iran Today, Mr. Kian says the only reason he even took up Sakine's case was because of the Western media's misrepresentation of it. But somehow, within months of him taking over the case, the Western media had their hands on details about Sakine's case that only his lawyer had access to.
قرار بود فعالین حقوق بشر بیان تو این مقاله من تو اینا چی قرائت بشه، یه مقدار توشیح ذهنی بشه، تبیین بشه در خصوص سنگسار. و چرا من اینو فرستادم؟ برای اینکه تبلیغات گسترده‌ای تو خارج از کشور بود، خودتون شاهدین که برای هر رابطه‌ای خارج از ازدواج سنگسار صادر میشه. حتی یه سایتی هم تو این زمینه افتتاح کرده بودن. به خاطر همین منم مشتاقانه این لایحه رو فرستادم.
Mr. Kian says that it was Mohammad Mostafai who put him in touch with Mina Ahadi and that she soon contacted him. According to Kian, Ahadi thought it was best to intensify the media campaign that had been started, and to achieve this, Ahadi had asked 2 German journalists, the same 2 German journalists who are now in prison, to visit Iran to interview Sajjad. In idea, Sajjad says he initially rejected.
خانم احدی به من زنگ زدن گفتن که 2 نفر آلمانی میان ایران برای مصاحبه و باید باشون مصاحبه کنم. من اول مخالفت کردم، هوتن کیان هم مخالفت کرد و بعد از یکی 2 جلسه که زنگ زد به من گفت باشه من با هوتن صحبت میکنم. خانم احدی گفتم باشه. با هوتن صحبت کرد، رفتم دفتر هوتن گفت که من خودم با خانم علی صحبت کردم، شرایطم رو گفتم و گفتم که به عنوان توریست وارد ایران بشن و اگه به عنوان توریست وارد ایران نشن ما این مصاحبه رو انجام نمیدیم.
The two German journalists were 29-year-old Jen Andreas Koch and 45-year-old Marcus Alfred Rudolf Hellwig. They arrived at Imam Khomeini International Airport in the early hours of Friday the 9th of October 2010. This is the itinerary they'd organised through their travel agent. As you can see on day 2, they had planned a trip to Tabriz.
این دو نفر تبع آلمانی با ویزای توریستی وارد کشور ما شدند بدون که از مراجع قانونی کشور ما مجوزی رو دریافت بکنن برای فعالیت در داخل کشور. اقداماتی رو کردن، قوانین کشور ما را نقض کردن، به این دو نفر تفهیم اتهام شده و در اظهارات خودشون نقض قوانین رو قبول کردن و به اون اعتراف داشتن.
Iran Today has been given exclusive access to these pictures taken on the journalist's camera prior to their arrest. Photos of Tabriz Central Prison, Tabriz Judiciary, and other areas where photography was not allowed. All these photos were taken from inside a car. Iran Today asked to meet with the two German journalists, and we were granted that permission. We spent half an hour with them. Neither agreed to speak to us in front of the camera or give an interview. But Sajjad did speak to us about his meeting with them.
خانم مینا احدی به من گفتن که این خبرنگاران آلمانی که میان ایران برای مصاحبه میان و نگران هستن در مورد وضعیت خودشون و اگر این مصاحبه انجام بگیره و برگردن آلمان کمک زیادی به پرونده خواهد شد، به پرونده مادره.
Talking to us off camera, Koch and Hellwig denied this. They said that they did not conduct any interview with Sajjad. But these are the photographs taken by the two Germans from their meeting with Sajjad in Mr. Kian's office. Notice the tape recorder in the middle table. Its red light is on. It's recording. The Iranian judiciary has not released this tape. In a released video on YouTube, Mina Ahadi also confirmed that an interview was taking place. So, how do things stand right now? At the end of November, the head of the country's Human Rights Commission, Mohammad Javad Larijani, told Press TV that there is a good chance that Sakina's life can be saved. Iranian judicial officials say the case is still in progress within the Iranian legal system and that any pressure should not and will not have an impact on the case.
از سال گذشته عده‌ای خواستن که این پرونده رو از مسیر حقوقی و قضایی خارج بکنن به زعم خودشون و وارد فاز سیاسی بکنن که ما کاری به کار اینا نداریم و کار خودمون رو مطابق با قوانین کشور و با رعایت حقوق شهروندی تمامی متهمین ادامه میدیم.
So that is the story of Sakina Mohammadi Ashtiani, with its many twists and turns, complicated by events inside and outside the country. Ibrahim Qaderzadeh, murdered by Sakina, never mentioned in the Western media, a life lost yet forgotten in this tale. There's Sakina herself, made a symbol of a movement that says it is against the inhumane treatment and stoning of women. There's Mina Ahadi, the head of that movement, a self-confessed fighter against the Islamic Republic who's been accused of being a member of a terrorist group herself. There's Sakina's lawyer, Mohammad Mostafai, now in Norway. The two German journalists caught illegally interviewing Sakina's son, Sajjad, at Hutan Kian's office, leading all four of them to being arrested. But one thing hasn't changed throughout. Sakina is still in jail, and Iran's judiciary says it won't be influenced by any of the events that have taken place. So it seems Iran Today will have to continue to monitor this story to see how it unfolds. Stay tuned.
The suffering is not